Hello, everyone. I just want to supplement a little bit uh, Jonas's videos on Jonas. I'm looking at the first page, and I'm looking at the second column here, the paragraph that begins our opening observation. I'd just like to maybe emphasize this a little more. The question that he's asking, he says, what is the way of being of an organism? The fancy philosophical word is the ontology, which means the study of being. What is the way of being? What kind of being is an organism, not a human being, just any biological organism? Of course, we are biological organisms. He says our opening observation is that organisms are entities whose being is their own doing. Now, this is to be contrasted with an inanimate object. They don't have to do anything to be, but organisms have to do in order to be. That is to say, that they exist only in virtue of what they do. And this in the radical sense, that the being they earn from this doing is not a possession they then own in separation from the activity by which it was generated, but is the continuation of that very activity itself, made possible by what it has just performed. So an organism has to act, has to be an activity, has to do. And that doing is continual. That's really the point, is that it's not as if the organism has to act towards a certain end, let's say its own being, and then when it's achieved that, it has it. It never possesses being in any kind of stable or absolute sense. What the organism gets from its activity is the chance to engage in more activity. Thus, to say that the being of organisms is their own doing is also to say that doing what they do is their being itself. That is, being for an organism is not a state, it's a continuous activity, really a struggle. And that's why I wanted to emphasize this. Because what he's saying about organisms is that because of their very mode of being, they have to continually expend an effort or a struggle in order to continue to be. There's no such thing as absolute rest or peace for an organism. Being for them consists in doing what they have to do in order to go on to be. It follows directly that to cease doing it means ceasing to be. And since the requisite doing depends not on themselves alone, but also on the compliance of an environment that can either be granted or denied, the peril of cessation is with the organism from the beginning. Here we have the basic link of life with death, the ground of mortality in life's very constitution. Just wanted to emphasize this paragraph because it is so important in Jonas's concept of the first sense of mortality, the can die, the continual possibility of death. And I think that the harder part of this essay is not the blessing of mortality, it's the burden. It's seeing in what the burden consists. And I think students sometimes go wrong in thinking that the burden consists of a fear of death. It's not really the case, because some organisms don't have the capacity to fear death, but all organisms have the burden of mortality. And the burden of mortality is just really the continual struggle that an organism has to undergo in order to continue to be. And that being is never assured because of what he says, an environment. A being needs to, as he says, and this is the next big concept, a being has to metabolize, meaning we are in a certain relationship with our environment and we can never be in complete control of it. So that activity that we are can be stopped at any time no matter how hard we work or how hard we struggle by an uncompliant environment. Just a note, it doesn't put everything together, but this particular paragraph seems particularly interesting and difficult. So I wanted to emphasize it. If I will occasionally supplement things as we go on, as I see fit.